Welcome back, class. Today we're going to take up proportions and landmarks of the figure. So I'm going to be laying out a couple of different figures and pointing out where these landmarks fall. So is what I want to show you. On the very first day of the class is what we did with the orientation day. We talked a little bit about the importance of dividing the figure in half. It's one of our important landmarks. So the pubic bone is exactly midway. So I'm going to be, with the drawing I'm about to show you, we're going to lay down a vertical line midway. Half of that is going to be right at the top of the tibia bone, half of that bottom of sternum, and then we're going to break down the head. So those are going to be our proportions, and then I'm going to do a front view, side view, and then we're going to talk about how these look in terms of a beanbag. So here's what we're going to do, and you guys should draw along as I do this. So what I'm going to do is place my vertical line. So trying to determine where this figure is going to be and how big it's going to be, you start that way. I'm going to bring it down maybe just a little bit further. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to find our midway point. So all you can do at this is guess, and then you check. So take your pencil and say, as that goes into that, and sometimes you happen to hit it like that did. So then we've got our midway. The next thing we're going to do, midway, as I talked about, was the pubic bone. So now we're going to divide this in half, and we guess at it again. And we take that and measure it. So we come from here, we go up, and just so happens to work. That's going to be the bottom of our sternum. And then we're going to come down one more and break this in half. So now everything's in quarters. If I've got it right and accurate, you're down here at the feet. So there we go. So there's our first big. I'm going to take my middle one and I'm just going to extend the line out just so that we can keep that halfway point in mind. Okay. Now I'm going to take the top quarter and divide that in half. So we're going to check this again. We're going to measure, make sure it's a half. Looks pretty close. Now, with a head is what we're going to do. The head's going to fit in this top quarter or top half of the quarter. And I'm going to make a circular shape. And so all of you are going to do the same. So we're going to make a circle. Now, if you notice, I'm not making it all the way down to the bottom of my head length. So what I want to do is check the width should be equal to the height. So I'm going to check the width equal to the height. Looks good. So what happens with a head, and we're going to be talking a lot about the structure of the head more later on, but with a head, the bottom of this ball, and what the ball is going to represent, the ball is representing the cranium, and the bottom, obviously, of the jaw is much lower than the bottom, as you can see, of the cranium. So therefore, the bottom of the cranium gets to the bottom of your nose. So bottom of nose, bottom of cranium. So from bottom of chin to bottom of nose should go to brow, should go to hairline, as I'll show you. So if I've got this right, this distance should go in there once to brow, once to hairline. Looks good, because the hairline is just a small little space left for the top of our head. So what we do is, with a head from the front view, one way we can do this is do an egg, and it would, I got to widen it out a little bit. And so it's going to get to the widest here and then come in. So I'm going to make this side a little wider if all goes well. And bring it in. So our head structure is a ball and an egg. And like I said, I'm going to talk a lot about this in the next few classes. So we use a ball and an egg like this for the simple reason we've got our center line. There's a lot of ways to execute it. I could say, because if we overlap these two shapes, is what we're going to come up with not being able to stand in the middle doesn't help, of course. Anyways, ball and egg. So you got two overlapped shapes, one in front of the other. Okay? So it gives us depth. Depth is going to be ultimately important. So in an early stage, we've got our form. Now, our measurements that we're going to use are all going to come off the cranium. So we've got a cranium length. In books, you're going to find head lengths. We'll talk about both. So I'm going to guess at where the shoulders are. You're going to make a mark, and I'm going to check this. And what I'm going to do is if I take a cranium and measure down a cranium from the cranium to my line, it looks quite accurate. So I'm going to leave it. So that's going from the ball, and then from the bottom of the ball to the top of the front of the shoulders, the pit of the neck, as it would be called. Now, the next question is how wide is the person's shoulders? Person's shoulders would be, if you took the width of our cranium, and then you measured it on one side, that's how far it would go. So that distance, you measure it on the other side of your center line to that distance. So now we've got our width of our shoulders in proportion to the head. We've got the distance from the pit of the neck accurate as well. So, is what we're going to do at the top of your rib cage, and starting about this much lower than the chin, there's an opening in order for you to breathe. It's the opening of the top of the rib cage. So I'm going to do a little ellipse right there. It would be about pretty close to exactly where I've got it. Maybe a little wider, but close. Okay. So now we're going to place that in, and we're going to watch our midway point. So we're going to imagine this a female figure. So the hips are going to be a little wider than the shoulders. So not much. So I'm going to bring down a vertical line, not too vertical. So now we've got our distances there. Now, the widest point, this is a couple of our landmarks. A couple of our landmarks are the corner of the shoulder, as we'll talk about, the pit of the neck, which is the sternum bone, and the widest point is at the pubic bone, which is the great trochanter. These are all points of importance. The lowest point of the figure, the ischium, is a little lower. So I'm going to make a mark right here. Okay. Now, we're talking about rhythm lines. Rhythm lines connect the upper body to the lower body. So now I'm going to take the edge of the shoulder, and I'm going to run this line this way. And you will do the same. So we're going to connect those points. I'm going to take this side and do the same. So now I've got roughly the outline of how wide my rib cage is going to be, and it begins to, I see a little problem, so I'm going to try to take care of it early. So I'm going to do that. So I'm trying to get it as equal as I can here at the bottom. All matters in the end. So now we've got it going to the center of the body like this. Widest point, great trochanter. I want to make sure my relationships work from there to there. Still seems to be pretty good. Now is what I'm going to do is measure down. I'm going to take the ball of the egg, the ball of the head, measure down. It's at the pit of the neck. Measure down again, and we're going to be at the bottom of the sternum. I just want to make sure I've got these accurate. Measure down one more time, and we're at the bottom of the rib cage. So again, from bottom of rib cage to the sternum, which I'll point out in a minute, the sternum. Pit of the neck goes to the cranium. All of those are equal measurements. So basically we're taking this cranium, we're measuring it down, pit of the neck. The next one, here's the bottom of our sternum, bottom of the rib cage. Okay. So those are our simple points of measure. So now I know when I place in the rib cage, and sometimes with our rib cage, I'm going to make the curve a little fuller, as you'll see. So a lot of times in bean torsos, we think this way. Now this is going to connect to the side, or the middle, roughly, of this, about here. And so it feels like it's the rib cage. And so now I'm going to take it and I'm going to connect it to my side and roll it down, but I'm going to let it go down to where the curve completes itself, like this. Kind of like that. And then I'm going to take this side and I'm going to do the same, trying to get it, say, as symmetrical as I can. All right, we'll leave it at that. So anyways, we got the feel of the rib cage. We know that now this is the bottom, and this is the sternum. And below the sternum, you're going to get the opening of the rib cage, which is going to be here. This is a guideline, so I'm just going to leave it temporarily. So now we've got that feel. Now, if we take this point of the opening of the rib cage, if you measured on your drawing, if you have it accurate, and if I do, it should be about midway of our construction. Falls exactly to where yours ought to fall if all is going well. So that's midway between our construction line and the front of the shoulders. Okay. So what there is there's a rhythmic line that goes from the temporal line of your head, which is here, and it's going to do this. Now this takes a little bit of playing with. If we run the temporal line down like I'm doing, it will get me to the edge of the neck like this. So it's going to do this, and I'm going to continue it down, and then it's going to hit this point. So you follow me, the temporal line, and when we talk about the skull, we'll talk more about the temporal line. This is going to hit right here where the rib cage meets. That line is going to begin to pull out to our widest, and then begin to pull in. This is now a rhythmic line connecting our points of our temporal line to neck, to the rib cage, to the pelvis. Again, this comes from, as when you read it on canvas, comes from Reilly, who was a well-known illustrator, animator. So this would come down. If I get it right, it should hit the edge of the neck. Mine's off a little bit, but we'll come back and construct it a little better later. So that's going to do that, and then this line's going to come, and then you bring it through, and I'm going to bring it in slightly. So now we've got our general rhythms of the rib cage moving into the pelvis, and the pelvis into the rib cage. This area, like I said, takes a little bit of playing around to get these lines symmetrical, but that would come in, curve into the opening of the neck, the way I've got it this way, the way I've got it that way. The other thing we're going to do is, on your body, is known as the clavicle bones. They start low. I've got to adjust my charcoal periodically. I'll have to do this. So the clavicle bones start at the pit of the neck, and they start and they rise right to that construction line there, and then over. The construction line was about the middle, a little higher than the middle of the ellipse of the opening of the neck. So that now I've got the height right of the clavicle bone. It's a little S curve, straight curve. This one, same way, straight curve. This Y point, I'm going to use a dark piece of charcoal to mark it, if I can find it. Anyways, I'll just use this. So what I'm going to do is mark this. This becomes an important landmark. This is an important landmark. This is an important landmark of the sternum bone. Bottom of the sternum, another landmark. 12th rib, another landmark. 12th rib, next landmark. Those are all landmarks that we're going to pay attention to. The trapezius muscle, this is why in anatomy we draw balls, not just the egg, because we know the trapezius muscle connects to the back of the skull, and it would come down like this and connect here. So that line's going to roll itself around and connect, giving us the top of the shoulder girdle. And let me get it just a little more accurate. There we go. So now we've got the neck in place and we got the feeling of the shoulders in place. On the figure, you're going to get a point here and another point as soon as I get this adjusted right. So we're going to get what we know to be the anterior superior iliac spine. And hold on, technical difficulties with the charcoal. For some reason it's not. Let me try another one. Sometimes if the charcoal isn't thick enough, that was, but then it wasn't. I'll be with you in just 1 second. I'll try another one. Somehow the charcoal is not being thick enough to pull this off. I'll make this one work. Okay, back. So we're going to take it from a point here, This is the anterior superior iliac spine, and it's going to come around this way, anterior being the top. So there's an opening in the front of the pelvis. This opening connects to, it's going to curve this way on the hip, the bone. The bone curves around, the opening of the pelvis does this, and the opening of the pelvis does that. Now, an easy way to do this is to put an ellipse through this whole thing to get the feel of the curve depending on the tilt of the pose. So I'm going to bring this around and just wrap right around the figure. In the future, we'll be doing a lot of that. So I'll just clean it up a little bit. So this is now the anterior superior iliac spine, and it comes to the opening of the pelvis. Okay, those become two other landmarks that are crucial, this point and this point, because depending on where it is, depending on how you have your figure turned, it might be more to the left, more to the right. Usually the edge of our rib cage usually will flow and meet this point, and the outside of the rib cage widens and comes to this point, like this. And so there's connections between these points. The anterior superior iliac spine, just to show it to you, is the point here and the point here. These 2 points are visible on pretty much every model, and this little curve angles out and back, so the edge of your skin is here, so this bone is visible. And so we search that out. From this point is what we're going to do is I'm going to construct the inside of the leg. And basically it's almost straight. I'm going to keep it very close to my guideline. And when I get to the inside ankle, it curves in. And this is a high point. And then the angle of the foot will go that way. It might be hard to see. So it's pretty much straight. And then it angles into the ankle. And then angles this way slightly. Okay. The outside of the edge of the leg, like what we were doing with gestures, this would curve in. The bone would pull out ever so little. And then this is going to come in, and I'm just going to generalize the entire thing. And so the same on the other side. So now we got a generalization to the entire figure. Then what we'll do is take the inside of this leg, like this. The knee, this line, this guideline for our knee is the patella would be just a little bit above, and the bottom would sit on that line. So the patella is in there like that. This patella is in there the same way, top of the kneecap. So that our guideline and landmark for that is the bottom of the patella. Now, what's nice about these high points, there's a muscle that connects to it, and it makes this wonderful spiral feel like this. It becomes the high point of the form. It does this, and then curves around the knee, and the tendons pull in. So again, it's wrapping through, curves around. This is our high point on this side. It goes between the muscle groups. It moves around the inside of the knee. You're standing together. If I had it right, they would almost touch, and curves around and connects into the leg. The inside muscle is in here. It gets full, moves this way. It's a little concave to convex, moves in. There is a large muscle in the center that would connect to the inferior point, roughly where I've got my stick. And then there's one on the outside, which we've got blocked in, but it would angle in this way. So, and the outside of the leg, it does this, just to be a little more subtle with the whole thing. It would even more. It would come in like this. Patella would be a little bigger, but I'm going to leave it. Outside then of that curve, the line that my original line would be there as almost a straight line, and it straightens up because there's a muscle. Our lower point is what happens if I used a curve from above the patella. There'd be a very graceful curve coming out for the muscle, and then it joins gracefully to my line. So it would do this. It would come out very little, a join to this line. The feel of the foot gracefully pulls out of it. This is what we do is we'd wrap it around. The inside muscle is high and stops here. This one ends up low. So the same with this side. This would be in a little bit. This would pull out. Very subtle, graceful curve. And would it join to the leg, probably somewhere about there, flowing into our original construction line and around. The other one comes around very high and joins this way. That's our general play, which already sets up our original lines for the bones of where our ankle would be. So then these combinations of lines flow together very nicely with the simple construction underneath. That brings us then to the feel of a cross contour, which I'm just going to mention now. We'll talk a lot about later. This curve of the leg would come to my line and roll up like this, giving us a feel of this grouping rising up, hitting the top and coming down. And these ultimately become cross contour lines, starting to bring in the form of the figure. Mostly I'm interested in, especially for drawing one, these landmarks of here, this halfway here to there, how we broke it up from the sternum, and then half with the head. These become our crucial landmarks. With our arm, is what we do is the armpit would come up a little bit, about, here's my sternum bone, armpit would come up a little bit, feel it curve over the rib cage, maybe like this. And I can generalize now the inside of an arm with a concave because of the way the bones would go. I'll move, well, what I'm going to do is place on a little angle. We almost have this done. Placing on a little angle, I forgot, for the angle of the armpit off of that line. So I'll do the same on this side so you can see it. The widening of the the pectoral muscle, really. And then this is going to come through as a concave. To the upper arm, we'll go to the bottom of the rib cage. So I'm trying to get that roughly in its place. So anyways, we're going from here to here. And I'm going from here. The wrist would be there. I'm going to curve the arm in. So the deltoid muscle would come out. And I'm just going to generalize like that. The other side will do the same. We got the angle for the armpit. We're going to come with a concave line to the bottom of the rib cage, about to there, a little low on the inside. Swing it around the curve of the hip. The arms do that. They go from vertical to an angle, just naturally. And this is the break of the wrist, and we'll just curve it in. Outside of the arm, the deltoid muscle will come out ever so slightly, and then in. So I'm just going to kind of feel that out a little. And then for the angle of the hand coming this way. To embellish it for just very little before I end this, is what we can do is the deltoid muscle would do this. It would angle up. The muscle on the inside of the arm, the bicep, would take a little bulge right there and come in. And the same on this side. The grouping of the outside muscles would be high like this, and the muscle grouping would cross over. So you get the little feel of the rhythm of the arms. Funny bone, as it would be called, would be in there, and this would be that way. Again, it's a simple generalization, but it works well. Slightly, the bicep muscle would break that concave line I put to a convex. It would angle in. This is the bone on the outside, the little edge that I have there. This would come around. Muscle on the outside would become a little higher, and this would ultimately cross over. Thumb would be up in this region, and this would be the same. Basically, that's our structure of the front. On the female figure, we do this. The feeling of the breast would come around. I want to check my head length. If I have the head length, if I come down once, that's about right, base of the rib. That's roughly where the nipple would be. So the pectoral muscle would be there. The curve of the form would wrap here. And I'll lighten up some lines so you can kind of get a sense of it. This would do the same. You want to feel the form moving over the rib cage. So this would then be gone. This would be gone. And then is what you would get right at that point of the head length. You get the feel of where the nipple would be. Navel would be right here, right where our extended rib cage meets the back of the pelvis. Navel would be right there. So anyways, that's our front view. The next thing I want to show you guys is a bit of a profile. So I'm going to put it right next to it. Our profile, I'm going to start with partial guideline. And is what we're going to do is now the head from the side, I'm going to overlap this. And again as a ball, and then I want to modify it. So if I start off with a ball, and then angle the cranium ever so slightly this way, I'm going to put on a subtle egg shape, extending it out. It's one way to do it. I'm going to show you others, but this is one way to imagine the egg shape, because if the ball is equal from top to bottom, the front of your face sticks out a little bit from the profile, but again, I'm going to show you this on other angles. The front of the face then would come from here, and it would be, I'm going to keep it pretty straight. And then off of the back of the skull, I can use a guideline this way. And it's going to give me a nice feel for a profile. So the bottom of the skull is the bottom of the nose. So it's what I have to watch out with this sketch is that I don't get the lower part too big. And so I'm going to check it. It looks a little large, so I'm going to shrink it ever so little. There we go. That looks better. These proportions are good. So now if we go from chin to base of nose, should go to brow, should go to hairline, which is there. This should go up a little bit from that point. So now we've got a head. So what we can do, sometimes we use a guideline. Reilly will use a guideline like this. The spine would be in here like this. Now what I want to do is just show you before I break that up and get our rib cage in. If we find midway of this head, I'm going to say it's there. I'm going to get rid of some of these guidelines so you can see it. So if this is midway, which it looks like it is, your jaw hooks up midway on the profile. So if I do that, and then bring in the angle of the jaw down to my construction line like this, you'll have the feel then of a structure of that head. So there's our nice cranium skull from the side. Our neck is going to move in this direction. Now, so what I'm going to do is place a rib cage. Not quite so dramatic in a minute here. Anyways, I'm just going to place in a rib cage loosely, and then I'm going to check. It looks a little big, but we're going to measure it. So we're going to take what we did in front and now do it for the side. So one cranium length if you come down, or you should be at the pit of the neck. Looks very close. Pit of the neck. Come down again, and we're at the bottom of the sternum. And now come down again, I should be at the bottom of the rib cage. So that tells me it's a little big. So that would be an accurate measurement. I'm going to do it one more time so all of you can see it. Top of the skull to bottom of skull, go down again. You're at the pit of the neck. That's where the sternum bone starts. Bottom of sternum, bottom of rib cage. So now is what I want to do is just refine this just slightly so that I can kind of get a better sense of my shape. So it's going to go like this. The opening of the rib cage would then pull back and it would be about as long as I've got it now. There we go. That's better. So, rib cages. Rib cages sit in the body at an angle. Watch that sort of axis line. My center line, I'm going to keep it here. So what I'm going to do is start the pelvis here. I've got to adjust my charcoal just a little. Whoops, and this could be a problem, but we will do our best at it. Take me just a moment. Okay. So the pelvis is what we're going to do is we're going to start here. And we're going to imagine the crest of the pelvis. That would be now from this side. That would be this. And we're just going to take it about to here. We're going to angle this in. We're going to make a curve. And we're going to kind of imagine a shape like this. I'm kind of thinking of the muscle of the gluteus maximus. I do want to keep in mind a guideline. Usually this line of the rib cage on a vertical line, this usually wouldn't exceed it. So I want to I definitely want to keep that in mind. Our shape, if I watch its height, the pelvis with the muscle would be a little smaller than the rib cage, so it seems to be pretty close. Now, this point, anterior superior iliac spine, where I've got my charcoal, is now this here. This is that point. This curve now is the crest. So there we are. So I'm now trying to figure out the pubic bone, which this is the muscle. So therefore the pubic bone would be down about here. So if that's the pubic bone, we know that to be our midway measurement. So now when I take my midway measurement, I can figure out how big this figure will be. So when I come down, I can come down to the bottom. So now I know that the foot's here. That's midway of the entire thing. This is the pubic bone. I have to find midway between the bottom of the foot and where the knee is. So I'm going to take that like we did, divide it in half, and that looks pretty close. So I'm going to keep that as our measurement. So now I've got a simple guideline to guide me to trying to get this figure in its right place. So anyways, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this leg in half. This muscle, large muscle of your leg, would begin to make its curve here. It's going to come down, and about to here, it's going to angle this way, the feel of it. And as what happens is, it's going to come around like this. It comes out to a Y point, and then it radically moves in like this. And then there's a strong angle this way because the patella of your knee sits in, and this muscle is way out. Now, if I have it right, the fullness of this muscle should be a little higher than the bottom of the gluteus maximus. So it looks pretty close, so I'm going to leave it. There is a feel of this movement coming around like this, so I'm trying to think of it at this stage. This is our knee. Our knee was here on this drawing. It's a bit small, unfortunately, but our knee is here, and as you can see, the bottom is at the bottom, so that's going to place the knee in our right place here. Now, what's neat about the side part of the leg, this lower leg is going to, believe it or not, take on an angle about like this, and the muscle is going to be really high in light of the front. So this comes way out and in. This muscle is coming out this way, and it's going to pull itself in almost to my guideline, and then the ankle is going to be in there like this. So let me try to get it just a little more accurate. I think I got that out a little full, so I'm going to bring it in. So it's going to do this. Now you can see the rhythm of the leg, how far this movement comes out, and then of course how these lines juggle. The muscle of the back of the leg about here is straight, and it will overlap this, and it connects to what we call the fibia bone, which is here. And you'll see the tendon of it just pretty much the way that I've got it here. So the tendon's going to be there. The patella is facing down, like that. This is the tibia bone. It's in as far as I got it. There's a slight movement to an S curve. The front of the foot begins to move out this way. The heel starts about here, the Achilles tendon. You're going to feel a nice gentle curve. You're going to see a gentle curve, and then the heel will come down, and then the bottom of our foot has to be exactly where we put it. And then we're going to get the top of the bones to about there, and then the feel of the edge of the toe coming this way. Oops. Sorry about that, you guys. It's giving me a little bit of a hard time here. Drawing off to a side is a little challenging. anyways, there would be an angle here, and then this would come straight across. It's a little long, so I'm going to shorten it, see if I can get it just a touch better. Sorry, I might have to get in front of everybody's way for a minute to try to figure this thing out. So I'm going to leave them like that. It's a little on the uphill, but we'll leave them. So from this, I'm going to trim his backside just a shade, get him in line. There we go. Now we got him. So is what we're going to do from here. You get a little bit of the small of the back in here. And in the front is what we'll get is a little bit of the rib cage. I'm going to edit this a little bit so we can see what's going on. We almost got him in there. This is the opening of our rib cage coming this way. And then the muscle would come out ever so little like this. It would come out at this angle. It would hit and curve around this way from this angle. So you get that feel. Out of here, you're going to get, here's the rib cage, and then you're going to get the feel of the opening of the navel right here, right about at the top of the pelvis. And then this is going to connect to our pubic bone, which is going to be here. So it's going to make a radical turn about there. And if all goes well, if we brought this through, there should be a continuum that moves through the drawing into this movement here, the way that I've got it. Okay. Into this, we are going to take a little bit of a gesture of an arm. So an arm, we started about here, and is what I'm going to do is pull it this way. Humerus bone would come roughly to the bottom of the rib cage like this, and then I'm going to bend it in, and then I'm going to get the feel because the hand would break about the pubic bone, and so I'm going to pull it back. So thinking of our general gesture in that sense. I'm going to edit my little guideline temporarily, and then into this you're going to get the feel of the muscle of the deltoid, and it would connect in here. This one on this side, you'd see it connect into the bone there. The front of the bicep would be in here. Tricep would be back here. And then you get the feel. I'm just going to kind of generalize this around. And you get the feel of the hand in there. The other leg, just as a suggestion of it, kind of pick out some guideline here. So it would swing through almost as low as this foot. I'll get this foot yet. And then a little bit of an angle for the heel. Just a suggestion of it as it's back there. So it would angle, say, back there. Anyways, this is our profile. The only other thing you're going to begin to see is a little oblique muscle coming on here. And again, the feel of the opening of our rib cage. Okay. One of the things I want to point out with this now is landmark is going to be here, pit of the neck. Another one's going to be at the 7th vertebrae spine there, which you would see through her neck here. Here where the clavicle meets the acromion process, you're not going to see it, but it would be there. The bottom of the sternum is here from a profile. And then the bottom of the 12th rib is here, as your landmark would be. And then again, the point of the pelvis, the anterior superior iliac spine is here. I didn't mention the great trochanter, but we talked about it. That's a landmark. I'm trying to get these darker, but I know they're a little hard to see. And the other one would be on this side, of course. Now, the interesting thing with this is the axis line of this running through this way, 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 this running through this way. So the figure is built on a series of zigzag shapes. The other thing that we talked about the other day I want you to see is interlocking rhythms like this. And is what you're going to see is this one interlocking this one, interlocking this one. If you notice this, where it comes to this, this interlocks this. This is low. Don't run the stomach to the pelvic or to the hip this way. This is lower, higher. Leg higher, interlocks the back of the leg, higher, lower. So those are our interlocking lines. They're going to be doing that with throughout the figure. I'm going to, my charcoal holds up. I think I've got a little more piece. And there's one last thing I want to show you before you start drawing. If I can get my charcoal in place, might have enough to pull it off. So what I want to show you is bean bags, and the first one I want to show you is just from the front and side, from the front, and how all of this might work with a bean bag. So if I have a bean bag, because you're gonna work with bean bag torsos. So this would be like a top of a bean bag, and then is what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of see it. So we're going to put a little curve to it. So I'm just going to imagine a torso from the front, waist coming down, bean bag, little corners to the bag, curve on the bottom, okay? So bean bags are nice because they give us the feel of depth because of the curves to them, and we can begin to shape something like this is. From here to here to here to here, we get that shape. Now, what I'm going to have you do is come up with these landmarks. So what I want you to do is on a bean bag, and then you're going to look at this from figures online, find the sternum. We know that this would be this way. And you'd have the opening. We know that in there, the clavicles are going to do this. They're going to come up to this point. So then you get the feel of the clavicles and where they go in light of that as a guideline. This becomes our landmark of the corner of where the clavicle meets the acromion process, very important. This becomes a landmark as well. The opening of our rib cage is going to be this way. And so now we got the feel. If I could just put in a rib cage in there. I could bring it down like I did on my original drawing. Feel out those rib cages if they keep moving through like we did on this one. This becomes a landmark, 12th rib, bottom of sternum, center of sternum, acromion process. All of those are landmarks. Then we found out if we took this, kind of moved it around, we could kind of get into our front to the opening of the pelvis. So now we can see, I'm just going to do a guideline here and say, this point of the crest, I'm going to put it here. This point, I'm going to put it there. And the opening of the pelvis is going to be here. And the curve, because this is the bone itself, going back this way. And of course, if you get in the habit of just drawing all the way through, for an ellipse like this, is always the best way to do it. It'll give you a three-dimensional form. This, in reality, of course, you would get rid of that line, and there's our landmarks. So this is coming through. This is the pubic bone, our midway point, and now this becomes, the pubic bone is a landmark. So there's our landmarks that I'm going to have you discover, okay? If we took this from a little more of a turn, and watched an angle to the beanbag, angle this way, and this coming around like this, say. So now we've got a beanbag and a little bit of a tilt. So our base here, so we could begin to say that I want to put a little more of a curve to the beanbag. Always is better. This becomes my center line. Center lines are crucial. Is what we want to do is come up with our opening. The rib cage can sit in here now. Feel it in there. clavicle bone, our landmark here, our landmark here, landmark here. Sternum bone, opening of the rib cage. Now this is coming in a little bit.